Hi, I'm Ash and I make vlogs, and sometimes I make vlogs about sociological topics. So let's get into this video. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the topic of the sociology of sex and gender and the fact that it's not a binary system. This is from a sociological perspective and my opinion, so any hateful comments will not be tolerated. Thank you. I also want to say why I'm qualified to talk about this, and that is because I am a sociologist. I have a master's degree in sociology. I also have Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and Psychology and an honours in Sociology. I will get that to show you right now. Let me just move this. Master of Arts, you can read that online. Bachelor of Arts with honours. Bachelor of Arts in Psych and Sociology. So hopefully you believe me, I've never got these framed. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna get my laptop and we're gonna get into the content. I also want to say I'm having probably the most awful bad hair day, so bear with me while we get back into what we're talking about. Now, as always, I have written a blog post about this, which will be on ashycakes.com. I will link that below, and the blog post will have lots of extra references for you, lots of videos if you want to learn more. And I was really inspired to create this video with all the recent controversy, but we will get into that. So I've got my blog post. Please excuse the sun. It's such a sunny day today, and yeah, it's the end of winter, so I'm very excited for spring here in Australia. It has been a relatively long time since I have discussed sex and gender from a sociological perspective, because it's been a while since I've been in New Zealand and actually teaching sociology, human services, all of those things. I also did give a lecture on sex and gender, but I can't find my lecture slides or my notes anywhere, so if any of my previous students happen to have any of those lecture slides, please reach out to me and let me know, because I would love that. I must have deleted them somehow when I moved from New Zealand to Australia to get rid of stuff, and I wish I didn't. I did actually find my toxic masculinity lecture and a lecture on terrorism, which I'm very grateful for, but I can't find my sex and gender one. I do also miss how much confidence I had when I did give those lectures and take tutorials. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of people have been like, you can't give lectures because you're so soft-spoken, you're so quiet, but I actually think I was really good at that. Anyway, that's enough about me. I do want to apologize if this is information overload. It is a lot. Feel free to break it up into parts. And again, any hateful comments will not be tolerated. If you don't agree with me, that's fine. This is my opinion, my perspective, and I'm just trying to educate people on things that exist in this world and that we might not be aware of. And I am aware it might be quite controversial, so I am a little bit scared. So please be nice if you can. I do want to share my knowledge with you and the world, and my knowledge is from a sociological one. I want you guys to be open-minded. I want you to realize that there's more than binary systems in our life. And I don't want to ever use an essentialist argument, because those types of knowledge and epistemologies are really problematic because they are very black and white, and that's not really how anything in this world is. So, from a sociological perspective, both sex and gender are social constructs. To make this a bit easier, sex can be seen as the biological features a person has, and gender is a social construct associated with such features. But both sex and gender are social constructs. Sex as a social construct, and I apologize if it sounds funny because of my New Zealand accent, but let's start with what a social construct is, shall we? A social construct is something that was termed by Thomas Luckmann and Peter Berger in their book, The Social Construction of Reality. This is an amazing book, and it came out in 1966. In their book, they discuss meaning and knowledge as something that is socially created. This means that people in society, so us, give meaning to certain things to help us make sense of such things. And I'm going to take something out of my own master's thesis here because I'm a nerd and I'm just really excited to be able to cite myself. It's something I've never done before. So, according to Steed 2004, social constructionism emphasizes that knowledge is socially constructed through discourse and is contextually embedded. Multiple realities are recognized as being constructed and negotiated in historical time. Knowledge is therefore also a cultural process of meaning making, as knowledge is not considered to transcend cultural meaning. Meanings of the social world are said not to be discovered but instead constructed by humans, interrelated with our ideas, language, politics, history, and society. Knowledge is co-constructed rather than individually constructed, and this way of socially constructing meaning is a byproduct of human existence. This means that the context we find ourselves in influences our perception of the world. And that's from my thesis. You can find that online if you just search social media and new religion. Hopefully it would come up, but maybe I'll post it below as well. I have done a video on it previously, but to break that down a bit and make us understand it, basically us as humans create knowledge and then we understand the world a bit better. Western society is indoctrinated with the sex and gender binary. It stems as far as pink for girls and blue for boys, although this is changing, which is good. But if you think about going to a department store or any sort of clothing store, especially for babies, there's always a predominantly blue section for boys and a predominantly pink section for girls, and it goes so much further than this. Like toys, girls' toys are always dolls, and boys' toys are always trucks, things like that, monsters, and it's a bit of a stretch. I don't know how else to explain that. Yeah. Anyway, in our current society, when a baby is born, they are either categorized as male or female based on their biological parts or features. And this goes even further if a baby is intersex, which I will explain shortly. Often doctors will strongly encourage, I don't want to say forced here, but often it is forced or coerced, that baby to become either male or female. Like they sit down with the parents, talk about all the risks associated with not changing into either male or female, and they're like, you have to do this basically. It's really effed up. So this is essentially genital mutilation. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube, but that's what happens. And this can lead to a lot of problems. Whether they do the surgery or don't do the surgery, there may be problems both ways, is what people and doctors and medical professionals will say. But I want to talk about mainly the problems that will occur or might occur if the sex reassignment surgery goes ahead. So a person might not know they were born intersex if their sex was changed at birth, or right after birth. They might not be comfortable in their assigned sex or gender, and they might never know why. They might literally never find out that they were intersex. There could be issues of sterilization, infertility, surgery without one's consent, feelings of distrust, especially when it comes to authority figures, doctors, etc., etc. Increased cancer risks for both, whether they get the surgery or not. Body image issues later on in life, gendered treatment, and so many more problems. In New Zealand specifically, and this is the same as Australia and I believe America as well, excuse me, when a baby is born intersex, the sex/gender reassignment surgery occurs. So if a baby is slightly more male presenting, so for example, they have a clitoris that is too long, they are going to be turned into a male, and so on. And one notable New Zealand American psychologist as John Money, I'm sorry I sound so sarcastic, but John Money believed that gender was malleable in the first 2 years of life, which means that if a person's sex or gender was changed, they'd fit that gender as an adult. Now let that sink in for a second. We know that that's not the case at all. I need to go change my camera's battery before it runs out. Okay, camera battery is changed and we're back. So I want to turn now to an amazing article by Dreger and Herndon from 2009. And I apologize if I'm not pronouncing their last names right. But they discuss when exactly Mr. John Money became a notable figure or authoritative figure for intersex children in New Zealand and the Western world. Dreger and Herndon discuss how people with sex abnormalities weren't really taken much notice of historically. Not until they would walk into a doctor's office with a completely different problem, and then the doctor might have noticed their sex differences and decided to take action. But other than this, intersex people went unnoticed for a really long time, and it wasn't until the 1950s when people really started to say, no, let's stick to a binary system. So this is what they say, and this is a quote. Maybe I can put in a little, what's it called? Like a card here or something to show you the quote. But surgical normalization did not become the standard of care for intersex children until the 1950s, when the psychologists John Money, John Hampson, and their colleagues at Johns Hopkins University developed what came to be known as the optimum gender of rearing model, which held that all sexually ambiguous children should, indeed must, be made into unambiguous looking boys or girls to ensure unambiguous gender identities. They go on to say the optimum gender of rearing, OGR, model was based on their assumption that children are born psychosexually neutral at birth, that gender is primarily a product of nurture, so upbringing, not nature, so genes and prenatal hormones, and that having a sex autonomy that appeared to match one's gender identity is necessary to a stable gender identity. Money and the Hampsons believed that children could be steered one way or the other so long as the steering began before the age of 2, give or take a few months. And this is really problematic because you could grow up as a certain gender and then that might change later on. So we start to see the problems with this here. And a lot of the time, babies who were intersex would just be turned into females because it was easier to do. The surgeons found this a lot easier, and it would look more natural to become a female rather than a male. And this is honestly disgusting that this genital mutilation happens at such a young age. And we now know that gender isn't malleable at all. I really wish I had like a whiteboard or something to help explain this. That's what I used to do at university, was use a whiteboard, and I think it would make sense. But I'm going to put a diagram in here shortly so that you can understand my point, and I filmed this another time. I just used Canva, so it's really basic, but it's honestly the most simplest way to understand it. So there are actually a plethora of sexes out there. There isn't just male or female. Okay? In Western society, there is the concept of the sex and the gender binary. If someone is female, then they're often associated with being a woman. And if someone is male, then they're associated with being a man. But this isn't always the case. Plenty of us do fit these categories. Personally, I do. I'm comfortable in my sex and gender. I'm a female, and I embrace like my femininity. However, there are a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, who do not fit either categories. But we just love to categorize to understand things, don't we? So I'm going to insert my intersex diagram here. I want to help explain this by using a diagram. This would work better on a whiteboard, but here we have the basic male to female sex binary, and I want to say that it's more of a spectrum than a binary. So, in Western society, when someone is born, they are either categorized into the male category or the female category, as shown by this diagram here. And if someone doesn't fit one of those, they are turned into male or female by invasive and often unneeded sex reassignment surgery. There is at least 1.7% to 4% of people in our world globally that are intersex. So what is intersex? I want to make it easy to understand. We have the sex binary, as you can see here, male and female, but sex is a spectrum. There are copious amounts of people who don't fit the norm of either male or female biological features. And here is the diagram that includes intersex. It's very, very basic, but this is the best way that I can explain it. So you have male on one side, female on the other side, and then there's this spectrum of anyone who is intersex or doesn't fit into the male or female category of sex, showing that the binary is in fact an issue. WebMD 2024 describes intersex as an umbrella term for people who are born with one or more traits in their chromosomes, genitals, hormones, or internal reproductive organs that don't fit the typical male or female patterns. Some of their traits might not match the sex they were assigned at birth or may combine traditionally understood male and female traits. While intersex traits are often noticed at birth, the differences aren't always obvious then. People might discover they have intersex traits at puberty or in adulthood, sometimes as a result of medical testing for infertility. In rare instances, such differences are found in autopsies after people have died. So, you have male, female, the binary, the sex binary system, which is what many people in Western society believe to be the sex binary. However, it's not a binary at all. If it was, intersex people wouldn't exist. It's a spectrum shown here by my really basic scribbles. So you see with that diagram, we can see how sex is a spectrum rather than a binary system. My camera keeps moving, that's so annoying. But yeah, so it's like a spectrum, and that is genuinely the most simplistic way I can explain it, and you can use that diagram for gender as well. So now that we've covered what an intersex person is, sex in general, and how effed up the whole genital mutilation thing is, let's discuss gender. So, on to gender as a social construct. The World Health Organization, or the WHO, describe gender as the characteristics of women, men, girls, and boys that are socially constructed. This includes norms, behaviors, and roles associated with being a woman, man, girl, or boy, as well as relationships with each other. As a social construct, gender varies from society to society and can change over time. So that's the World Health Organization definition. So it does just talk about the gender binary, but it does also say that gender can change, it's fluid, and it varies in different places. So there are some countries that have a third gender, and yeah. But there are actually so many more than just two genders. And us in Western society, a lot of us will use the gender binary. And I've probably made it pretty clear that I'm not a fan of the binary system, but we have to critique it and understand it to help us understand that it's more than a binary, it's a spectrum. So the gender binary can be explained like the sex binary, and often someone's sex is used to define their gender. For example, if someone is female, they will often identify as woman, and if someone is a male, they will often identify as a man. However, we do need to unpack this a bit more, which I've kind of touched on because gender is a spectrum. There is a plethora of other genders other than man and woman. There are those who choose to be non-binary, so those are people who don't want to identify with any gender, the theys. Sorry, there's just like dogs in the neighborhood barking. I don't know if it was Benji. Benji's downstairs with Luke, so hopefully it's not him. But yeah. So there's lots of different genders, there's no gender, and all of that. It's not just men and women or man and woman. It's not just that. And gender is socially constructed because often as people in society, when we see a stranger walking past us, we use gender categorization to deduce whether they are a man or a woman. This is kind of like a natural process that we do, but that's not to say that there are only two genders. This is just the way that we're indoctrinated into thinking about gender because of the social context we're in. But this is problematic because that person might be non-binary, they might be intersex, we don't really know, and it's none of our business what biological features that they have, really. Like, if someone went up to someone on the street because they were, I guess, not feminine presenting enough, and they went, "Do you have a penis?" or something like that, that person would be offended. Like, that's not okay. I hope you get my point. I really do. And I also want to briefly mention trans persons here too, as I think that's important to mention. So according to Wikipedia, a trans person is someone whose gender identity differs from that typically associated with the sex they were assigned at birth. Additionally, a trans person may refer to someone who doesn't identify as their perceived gender or sex, and it can be one of those umbrella terms to help describe a lot of different people. And I also want to mention again how indoctrinated our society, especially Western society, is with the sex and gender binary. So let's think about public bathrooms for a second. So when you go to a public bathroom, there's the female bathrooms, there's the male bathrooms. They might use women or ladies or men, gentlemen, any of that. And there's also a disabled bathroom as well. I need to mention that here. It's not often that you do get the universal bathroom. Sometimes you do. And I know in Melbourne, I was quite, I don't want to use the word shocked, but I was surprised that a lot of the bars have universal bathrooms. The dogs are going off again. But that's good. And again, like changing rooms, swimming pools, spas, all of that. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're going to argue about safety. And yes, that is a good point. But what I think would help limit crime in public bathrooms and public spaces like this is literally to have a locked stall in every single bathroom, like multiple ones, rather than like bathrooms without locked stalls, all of that, because that would really, really help reduce crime, no matter what sex or gender it's labeled. Yeah, there is a whole debate on like the use of public bathrooms and that, but I'm not going to get into that today because we'll just go off down a deep rabbit hole. But that's just my opinion. Just make sure you have lockable stalls in every single bathroom so that everyone is safe. Have cameras outside the bathroom, not in the bathroom obviously, but in like public spaces where someone's not doing their business. Both sex and gender binaries are something that needs to be critiqued because it can create institutionalized structures of power, which is problematic, and it can lead to discrimination and harassment of those outside the binary system. A binary system leads to a this or that way of thinking, and often because of this, we'll see the world in black and white. And we don't think about any shades of grey or other shades or abstract ways of thinking get shoved to the side. So we're not really thinking abstractly, is the best way I can say that. And it's even more problematic when we do think about gender stereotypes. Like, what's a gender stereotype? Woman is emotional, men is aggressive. It's a way of excusing people's behaviour, and it's problematic. Someone isn't emotional because they're a woman. They're emotional because they're upset or something's caused them to feel that way. And someone isn't aggressive because there's a man. They might be aggressive because of the social context they've been brought up in. Maybe they've been hurt as a child or abused. I think I might have to cut that word out. But it is really a really problematic way to explain behaviors away. There's that whole concept of boys will be boys and girls will be girls, and often it's the first one that really sticks out to me. Like, it starts all the way from kindergarten up until primary school to high school to university. There's always this boys will be boys culture, and it's used to explain, and what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know the word I'm looking for. Like, explain away the problematic behavior that's occurring. And I remember once I was talking to someone at university and they told me that our word culture didn't exist. And I didn't say anything at the time, but thinking back at that, how can you say that to a woman? How can you say that to a woman who's at university where there is a really, really strong R word culture, especially in certain disciplines? Yeah, because that definitely exists, and just using words like boys will be boys just reiterates that, and we need to move away from our word culture, please. So, to summarize, both sex and gender are not fixed, they are fluid, and they can change at any time. So, for example, tomorrow I might wake up and be like, I'm actually a man. So this is just an example. I am definitely comfortable in my sex and gender, but that's just an example of how it can change. Some people might choose to dress more androgynous, but it doesn't mean that they're not their gender. What's one example? Let's talk about Elliot Page. So he is trans, he came out as trans, but was female previously and now is a man. So I think that's a wonderful story about someone becoming more comfortable in their own skin. And it just shows how sex and gender can change over time. So if someone tells you what their pronouns are, their pronouns might be they might be he, or they might be she, or they might be a combination of those. Now, if someone tells you what they are, you use those pronouns out of respect, because that is what they are. It's like if I say to you, hey, my name's Ash or Ashley, you're not going to start calling me Charlotte, because that's just not my name. It's the same for pronouns. I am she, her, right? You can say she, her, or they for me, and I'm not going to be offended. But if you call me he, I'm going to be offended. I got misgendered on Airbnb once, which I thought was so weird. Like, the review was like, he was really clean, he did this, he was friendly. And I'm like, okay, but I'm pretty feminine presenting, so I don't know how they got that. And that brings me to my next point. This is going to be such a long video. Now let's talk about that Olympic boxer. And this is probably going to be the most controversial part of this video. But there is a plethora of misinformation, there is a lot of cyberbullying, and I just want to address it. If you're not interested in this, you can leave the video right now. I won't be offended. But if you are interested in a sociological perspective, please keep watching. I don't know how to actually pronounce her name, so I'm sorry if I butcher it. I don't know if it's Imane or Imani Khalif. She is an Algerian professional boxer. She versed another boxer at the Olympics called Angela Carini. Angela abandoned the match and her coach... She abandoned the match because her coach claimed that it was because she did not feel safe. Angela did not shake her opponent's hand following the abandonment of the match, and I would put this to, she was probably not feeling great and just wanted to get out of there. But this did stir up quite the controversy with Imane's perceived gender, or alleged gender. I want to point out there that Imane Khalif was assigned female at birth, identifies as both female and a woman, so she's the same as me, and is no way a trans person. Not that her biological features, her body parts, or her internal organs, or chemicals in her body are any of our business. But there is so much controversy because of this. So, since this has occurred, Angela Carini has actually apologized. She said, "I want to apologize to her and everyone else. I was angry because my Olympics has gone up in smoke. I don't have anything against Caliph. If I were to meet her again, I would embrace her." And even Angela can use the correct pronouns. So, the false allegations that came out about Caliph were fueled by her disqualification in the 2023 IBA Women's World Boxing Champions due to a failed unspecified gender test. Now, I don't know too much about this, but I know another athlete was disqualified for the same reason. But these tests can be problematic because bodies are way more complex than binary systems, so we don't really know. And I'm not a medical professional in that regard, so I don't really understand that. But other than that, there has been no medical evidence published that Imane has XY chromosome, so that's the male chromosome, or any extra testosterone in her body. Even if she did have extra testosterone, that doesn't make her a man. So she was 1000% born female, and I'll pop in more information in the box down below, and my blog has heaps of resources as well. There is an article that claims that Carini ended the match because of a severe pain in her nose, so she may have been worried about making that pain worse, and all of that. It had nothing to do with how strong Imane was or what she looked like. And I really can't believe how much misinformation is going around about her for literally no other reason than Imane being kind of strong. So, some notable figures who have cyberbullied her are as follows. We have Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling. She said, "A young female boxer has just had everything she's worked and trained for snatched away because you allowed a male to get in the ring with her." And she has said a lot more, and a lot of the comments are commenting, no, she's a woman, which I love to see that. That is great. But a lot do side with J.K. Rowling, and it makes me feel awful that this is happening to her. And yeah. Another person, Donald Trump, said, "I will keep men out of women's sport." Logan Paul, oh, this will be good, said, "This is the purest form of evil unfolding right before your eyes. A biological man was allowed to beat up a woman on a global stage, crushing her life's dreams or fighting for her deceased father. This delusion must end." And yes, we all know this isn't the first time Logan Paul has been controversial online. And another politician, J.D. Vance, claimed that she was a trans person and blamed Kamala Harris, saying, "This is where Kamala Harris' ideas about gender lead to a grown man pummeling a woman in a boxing match. This is disgusting and all of our leaders should condemn it." So this is just examples of the cyberbullying that is going on, but as you can imagine, if notable figures like this are saying stuff, what about all the other people that are sending her messages or commenting? Like, it can do irreversible damage to someone's psyche, I guess. So let's talk about this for a moment. I feel like I look really small on camera. Not that small. So she was born female, we know that. She identifies as her assigned sex at birth, and her gender identity is that of a woman. And we still have no proof, no medical evidence that she has any other chromosomes other than XX, so the female chromosomes, and people are still calling her a man. And I don't want to sound too biased here, but I feel like I already have throughout this video. Even if she was trans, it wouldn't be possible, considering that in Algeria, being trans or even being attracted to a person of the same sex is illegal. So she wouldn't have been able to be trans anyway. And hypothetically, if she had any sort of condition like PCOS, meaning she had high levels of testosterone in her body, she's still a woman. There are so many conditions where a person's testosterone or chromosomes might be different, or they have different chemicals in their body. It doesn't mean that they're not who they say they are. So, and then having PCOS doesn't make you a man, and she doesn't. That's just an example. Or I don't know if she does or not. And I feel really bad that she's had to come out and do that whole makeover thing, because there are a lot of nasty comments saying, oh, this looks digitally altered, or she's just doing this to prove that she's not a man. Like, it's so horrible, especially when it's misinformation. But in recent news, a cyberbullying lawsuit has been filed, which makes me so happy, because she has faced a lot of bullying on platforms like X. Like, I think Elon Musk even said something. So X was previously Twitter. I think Twitter is a better name. What do you guys think? So this lawsuit claims that Caliph has been victim of misogynistic, racist, and sexist cyberbullying. And I wouldn't be surprised, like, the amount of threats she would have gotten following this. And I don't know what's going to happen. I am filming this video on, what's the date? The 19th of August. And I did see, like, Google to see if there was any updates, and the only thing was that she had that makeover thing. So I don't know what's going to happen next, but I sure am excited to find out. And I want to leave you all with one last thing. I'm going to put plethora of references down below and in my blog as well, so make sure you go check out the blog if you want to read it as well. I'm going to put a list of gender identities, and please, please, please take the time to read these. So to summarize this video, we now know that both sex and gender are social constructs. We understand what intersex is, and we know we should be more mindful when discussing sex and gender. Think of them as spectrums, not binary systems. And I just encourage you all to, I don't want to sound like classist or elite or anything like that, because I'm not. Just encourage you to question everything is what I really want to say. So thank you so much for watching. I'm Ash. Please like and subscribe. If you want to see more sociological topics, more vlogs, I would love that. I'll see you next time. I'm Ash. Bye. Tex. Hello. You being a good boy? You got strawberries? You got a new toy, didn't you? You got a hamburger. You're gonna eat the microphone. Tell everyone thanks for watching. He's not interested. Bye.